When we die, do we become the equivalent of Casper the friendly ghost? We'll be talking about this on Afterlife topics and metaphysics. Okay guys, so why am I talking about this old cartoon, Casper the Friendly Ghost? And I think it was also a really bad 1990s film. Well, I'm just using that as an example of the pop culture opinion of what so-called spirits are like. And sometimes I think that the whole idea that spirits have these like white sheets around their heads or that they look like that is based on some old 1900s photography of like physical mediums where they see like these materializations come out wearing like long white robes and things like that. So I think that's how that impression came about. So ironically, there may even be a little bit of truth behind that, because when you research like physical mediumship, it turns out that like these materializations that appear allegedly are cloaked in like long white sheets made out of ectoplasm. And you may only know what ectoplasm is by watching Ghostbusters, but there is actually a lot of information about that phenomenon, which is allegedly spirit taking like white blood cells and things out of your body and manipulating it so that they can recreate themselves inside of a seance room. Pretty crazy stuff. We'll talk about this in the future. But for now, I want to talk specifically though about this idea of the Casper, the friendly ghost, archetype of people who are dead. And how this mindset actually penetrates deep into Western culture in ways that we sometimes underestimate. So even today, a lot of people have an idea about the afterlife, that when we die, we become these phantasms. We kind of have this non-corporeal shape and form that just looks like a wisp or a ball of light, or in Casper's case, like a rough outline of like a person, but it's become kind of like this phantasmagoric version of a person. So you might see like a mouth and eyes, but the rest of it's just like a blob, a shape. And I guess, if you probe deep into ghost lore and ghost sightings, people have seen like weird apparitions and things like this. And so just a general kind of consensus that people who don't have any knowledge make is that when we die, maybe we become like this non-corporeal phantasmic entity. And this is a belief that, again, it goes very deep. And it even spreads itself out into the world of like mediumship and people who claim to have knowledge about the other side and the things that they teach to people, right? So sometimes I'll hear descriptions where people say, the thing that I don't like, I believe in the afterlife now because I've done all the research, or I've had experiences, or I went to a psychic, but the thing I'm going to miss the most when I die is I won't be able to eat chocolate anymore, and my hands will just pass through objects. I won't have any more physical experience. And in which case some alleged psychic or medium may say, well, we come to Earth to experience those physical sensations, and then when we die, we don't have to use them anymore, but if we really want them, we can reincarnate back to Earth. And then this creates this very, not very pleasant idea, which is that the only way that we can do the things that we want to do, whether it's eat chocolate or hug our loved ones or have any kind of meaningful existence, we have to give up the Casper the Friendly Ghost lifestyle and then come back down to Earth, go back into a physical body, and then reincarnate, or then die again, and until we decide we don't want those things anymore. And so again, this is an assumption that people make. It's not based upon fact. And it causes a lot of fear and anxiety about the afterlife. Know this because after I wrote my book in 2015, I began getting a lot of emails about the afterlife. People asking questions, hoping that I could answer some of these insecurities, as well as many people who come to our group Afterlife Topics, and who also, have a lot of anxieties about things that they've been taught. And so I very commonly get emailed questions like, can I eat chocolate when I die? Can I hug my loved one? Can I hug my dog or cat? And I'm just amazed how many books and resources and people out there say no, that you can't. Usually people, in my opinion, trying to make a buck off the topic and just making shit up. So now that I'm hopefully done ranting, let's talk about why this idea is wrong and what we know about the afterlife and what it's really like. I talk about this in some of my earlier videos about what the conditions are like, but let's reiterate it a little bit. When I began going out of my body in 2014 and having a lot of experiences where I'm on this bed, the one you see right here, rising up out of my body and looking around the room, one of the first things that struck me was how normal and physical this parallel body was. So that, say this is my hand, and then my astral limb, I would have motor function of that astral limb, and I'd be able to move it up out of my physical hand, or rather my earth density hand, if you want to call it that. And I could then, move my fingers, and I would have sensation. Interestingly enough, sometimes the sensation wouldn't come in at first. In fact, I would even feel pins and needles in my astral limbs, and I would feel blood circulating, as if I had been motionless for a long time. Then once I began moving my astral body, the blood began flowing back through it again, and then I regained sensation. And then once I had sensation again, I would do various experiments. I'd bite my skin, I'd hit my arms against each other, do different things to test the levels of physical sensation. And I still haven't found any major difference that I can note. Interestingly, I can even feel pain. Now, I don't think that in the astral level, when we shift into that body to have a new lifestyle, that that we are prone to disease or disability or long-term pain. I think that at this point our minds have control over our bodies enough to not allow those types of things to happen. But I still think that if you pinch yourself, you're going to feel a pinch, because ultimately you're still in a vessel that is needed to be able to operate in a higher density condition. And that is what the afterlife is. So, just based on those experiences of my own, I can tell you that we don't become an apparition when we die. There is no Casper the friendly ghost. That is a myth. And it also means that yes, you can eat chocolate and you can do the things that you enjoy. To illustrate this, I actually want to go into my group Afterlife Topics, because there's been some cool posts that people have made recently about this, and about what they've learned about what their loved ones are doing on the other side. And so please pardon me while I bring up my browser. Alright, so this is a thread on Afterlife Topics where the topic was basically frustration about people who claim that when you die you don't have any needs, wants, desires, physical form, etc. And on this thread we have some people talking about what they learned about their loved ones after they passed and what they're actually doing. So I won't include their last names, I'll just mention their first names. If you are curious about the thread, you can join Afterlife Topics on Facebook and probably find it. So let's pick a few out. A gentleman named William says, an evidential medium told me that my son is still bodybuilding at a gym and helps veterans who have lost limbs on this side. They're not just orbs floating around bumping into each other, they're more alive than we are. So if this account is true, it matches with my experiences, and it also shows you that we do have physical bodies there. It doesn't mean that a disability from this side is going to carry on to that side, but somebody may, well, I don't want to say that either. I think what happens is that if you die on this side, because the astral body is a replica, it may initially be in the same form it was in originally. So if someone is suffering from a chronic condition, from what I've learned, this condition may very temporarily persist until somebody comes along and helps to show them that they can get rid of it just by changing their mind about it. And so that there's a lot of people who work as guides and I suppose therapists on that side who help new arrivals adjust to the new powers of the mind that they possess on this higher density dimension. And so I thought that's interesting, this account by William about somebody who's still bodybuilding. And you have to also ask, well, if you can change your body with your mind, why would you have to bodybuild? I don't know. I mean, if you ask me, it's a matter of earning what you get. Like, I work out at the gym. You may not notice because I guess I'm kind of a skinny guy, but I am bulkier than I used to be. I used to be really skinny. Like, now I'm like 155 pounds. I used to be like 130 pounds. And a lot of that is muscle. And I feel proud of that. I'm happy that I was able to build myself up a little bit. If somebody gave me a magic pill to just make myself ripped, it would be tempting, but it's just like, we get meaning from work and allowing that work to have an effect, to be able to look back into hard work and see that we made something of ourselves. And so I guess that's why it might make sense to me that people would be bodybuilding still. Sorry, I guess that's a little bit of a tangent. Let's continue. The gentleman, Marcus, and if you go on my forum, you'll definitely know who this is. He says, when my daughter materialized in front of me for the first time ever, she had a human body, yet she was never born to us. And what he's talking about is that she passed away as a baby, and despite that fact, she grew up on the astral plane into a full human bodily form. So, so she had her childhood on that side, and then she grew up and is now a young woman. And she materialized because some of the people on my forum are involved with physical mediumship, where that type of stuff, believe it or not, happens. All right. Alright, I'm just looking for a good one. Here's one. A woman named Stephanie says, my cousin who passed showed me that she was on a beach and came through to a medium and said the exact same thing that she also said to her, that she was sitting on a beach. And I'll also point out, when my mom passed away, I interviewed her astrally, so she came into my room and I talked to her and asked her a million questions about her life on that side, and she said that she was in a rehab facility, which is also something that a lot of people have reported about their deceased loved ones, and that when she wasn't in the rehab facility, she was out doing bonfires on the beach and hanging out with friends she had just made. He was won by a woman named Susan, saying, my son passed. I was told from a medium that he said he is in a rehab type setting. And so again, and then when I probe into some of these accounts, and it matches up very well with my own astral experiences on that side, where especially after my mom passed, she was in a rehab type of facility, and it was a very beautiful hospital with like 1950s style nurses, and it was really about the psychological healing process. And this relates to the fact that a lot of people who pass over, they don't immediately change. Like, there isn't the idea that, you see the light, and the light comes and then cleanses you of all your inadequacies and you become perfect and angelic. And unfortunately for some people who really like that idea, it doesn't seem to usually work that way. I mean, I suppose it could in some cases. There's no hard and fast rules in this subject, but I've talked to many people now about these rehab places that people go to if they're not in a good psychological state of mind. Alright, so I know we've actually covered a lot of topics here, and this is stuff that we have to talk about in future videos. Rehab facilities and bodily injuries on this side, and how we can get rid of them when we cross over, and astral conditions and all this crazy stuff. And I'm sure people watching this may have a zillion questions, and I probably do not have all the answers to those zillion questions. But this is a field that, we're all putting our heads together. We're learning more about this as we go on. And the main point I wanted to make tonight, my main thesis, is that we do not become Casper the friendly ghost when we die. Okay, so when people make this claim, it is a claim out of ignorance. We don't become phantasmagoric, we don't become phantasms, we don't become wispy spirits. And it's not to say that somebody may not choose to go into that form. Certainly people do catch orbs of light on this side of the veil that are people's deceased loved ones. And actually my buddy Kensho, he goes out of body a lot, and he goes into orb form as a means of locomotion. So he will basically become an orb of light, float or shoot to where he wants to go, and then he will reform himself as how he normally looks. Because in his perspective, orb of light form is great for moving around, but you can't pick things up, shake people's hands, and you can't really, be yourself. Well, like I said, a lot of topics and a lot more to talk about in the future. If you like this video, hit subscribe, hit like, because that's the only way that I'll be able to keep going with this channel. It is very difficult for a channel these days on YouTube to rise above obscurity, and so that always helps. And I will talk to you next time.